What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be diving into one of the most exciting and dominant runs in modern NHL history, the Chicago Blackhawks dynasty in the 2010s. This video will be about their journey to the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals, setting the tone for their decade of dominance. Before I begin, I just want to remind you guys to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me out. This is my first time doing this style of video, so drop a comment, let me know what you think about it. Let's get into it. So first, I want to rewind back to the mid-2000s, before all the parades and banners. The Blackhawks were rebuilding, retooling, and quietly preparing to shock the hockey world. At this time, the Blackhawks were far from a powerhouse. They had poor attendance, few playoff appearances, and there was a disconnect with fans that made them one of the least talked about teams in the NHL. This all started to shift in 2006 and 2007, when Chicago hit the draft lottery jackpot twice, selecting Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane back-to-back years. These two would soon become the faces of a reborn franchise. By 2008-2009, the Hawks were heating up. They finished with 104 points. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, but then got bounced by a veteran Detroit Red Wings team. They proved that they were close, really close. The writing was on the wall. The Blackhawks were coming. Elsewhere in the league, dynasties were shifting. The Red Wings and the Penguins were still elite, but the NHL was starting to make room for a new giant. The summer of 2009, that's when the pieces started falling right into place. Chicago made headlines by signing Marian Hossa to a 12-year, $62.8 million deal after failing to re-sign last season's leading scorer, free agent Martin Havlat. Once contract talks broke up with Havlat, the Blackhawks quickly turned their attention to Hossa. Hossa had just lost the Stanley Cup Final back-to-back years, this year with Detroit and the year before with Pittsburgh. This was his third shot at the Cup in 3 years, and he decided to pick Chicago. Other offseason moves included signing another Red Wing, Thomas Kopecky, as well as two-time Stanley Cup champ with the Devils, John Madden, a veteran center and former Selke winner who added defensive responsibility down the middle. In net, Antti Niemi was promoted to backup after a solid AHL season, while Cristobal Hewitt began the season as the starter. Behind the bench, Joel Quenneville, who had replaced Dennis Savard early in the 08-09 season, brought consistency, discipline, and a defensive structure that meshed perfectly with Chicago's offensive speed and youth, molding this team into a two-way powerhouse. The Blackhawks were electric from the start. They kicked off the season with the NHL Premier Games in Helsinki, Finland, splitting a pair of games with the Panthers. From there, they caught fire. Through the first half, they led the Central Division with an incredible 41-16-5 record, totaling up 87 points. They also had strong contributions across the board, with Toews and Kane providing a flash. Hossa returned from shoulder surgery in late November and made an immediate impact, netting 34 points in 37 games. And the defense, anchored by Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook, was among the best in the league. By the trade deadline, they weren't looking for a major change, only making some minor depth moves. More importantly, by March, it was clear that Antti Niemi had taken over the starting job from Hewitt. This team didn't need to make a splash at the trade deadline. They were already proving to be extremely dangerous. Chicago finished the season with 52 wins and 112 points, second in the West. They were first in the league in team defense and third in goals for, a complete team. Duncan Keith won the Norris Trophy, and Toews and Kane were only just beginning their playoff legend. In round 1, game 1, Nashville stuns Chicago, stealing the opener by a score of 4-1. In game 2, Chicago bounces back in a gritty game where 14 total penalties were called, winning 2-0. The Hawks drop another one in game 3. The fans are starting to think, is this going to be another failure year for the Hawks? But in game 4, they come back fire, winning 3-0 with a 2-goal performance from Patrick Sharp. Game 5, the classic. Patrick Kane ties the game with 13 seconds left while shorthanded, and Marian Hossa, fresh from a major penalty, buries the OT win. Chicago needs one more to close it out and go to the second. In Game 6, both teams come out firing in the first period, with 7 of the 8 total goals being scored. Patrick Kane scores his 4th of the series. Free agent acquisition John Madden seals the game with an empty net goal with 8 seconds left. Chicago moves on to face the Vancouver Canucks. Much like the first series, Vancouver stuns the United Center crowd, scoring 5 goals in the first 2 periods. Pressure mounts again, but then Chicago finds its groove, winning all 3 of their next games. They dominate with speed and special teams, scoring a shorthanded goal and 6 power play goals, 4 of them coming in Game 4. With their backs up against the wall in Game 5, Vancouver claws back with a win. But in Game 6, the Hawks bury them 5-1 in Vancouver. Patrick Kane gets his 7th of the playoffs, and the rivalry intensifies. Dustin Byfuglien was a force to be reckoned with in this series, getting 6 points in 6 games, including a hat trick in Game 3. Western Conference Finals is a battle of the West's elite. San Jose comes in hot, but the Blackhawks come in hotter. Game 1, a 2-1 win thanks to Niemi standing on his head, stopping 44 of 45 shots that he faced. Game 2 was another easy victory for the Hawks. Game 3, Dustin Byfuglien, who netted another 4 goals in this series, is the overtime hero. Game 4, Dustin Byfuglien again nets the game winner, this time with 5 minutes left in the third. Chris Vertzeeg was able to seal the sweep with an empty net goal. The Hawks punched their ticket to the finals for the first time since 1992. Stanley Cup Finals, first time since 1992. Game 1, unforgettable. 11 goals scored, with Thomas Kopecky scoring the game-winning goal. Chicago takes Game 1, 6-5. Game 2, Chicago, 2-1. Niemi, 32 of 33. The Blackhawks are 2 wins away. Game 3, it's a back-and-forth game, and the Flyers bounce back to win with a Claude Giroux overtime goal. In Game 4, down 3-1 after 1, the Hawks fail to claw their way back. The series is tied 2-2 with all the momentum going for the Flyers. The Blackhawks come out flying in Game 5, going up 3-0 after the first period and winning the game 7-4. Dustin Byfuglien yet again has 4 points in this game with 2 goals. The Blackhawks are 1 win away from their first Stanley Cup in 49 years. And now, Game 6. The game that this series is remembered by. Scott Hartnell ties it late in the third, giving us our second overtime of the series. And then, it happens.
Here's Campbell handing on to Kane again. Lots of head fakes there, trying to shake Timonen. Threw one in front. Oh my, it rattled around, and it kicked on back, and then score!
Silence, confusion, and then chaos. Patrick Kane scores the most mysterious Stanley Cup winning goal ever. He knew when nobody else did. And then, the celebration. Chicago wins the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1961. The 2010 offseason is a bittersweet one. Due to salary cap constraints, the Blackhawks have to make some tough decisions. Out went Byfuglien, Andrew Ladd, Chris Vertzeeg, John Madden, Brent Sopel, and Antti Niemi. In came some cheaper depth, like Victor Stolberg, Fernando Pizzani, and a new goalie tandem, Marty Turco and rookie Corey Crawford waiting in the wings. It was the price of success, but the core remained. Kane, Taves, Keith, Seabrook, Hossa, and Sharp. The start of the 2010-2011 season, the Hawks weren't bad, but they weren't great either, having 45 points at the halfway point of the season. The 2010-2011 season was going to be a grind. They struggled with consistency, hovered around 500 early on, and saw injuries slow Hossa and Taves at times. Patrick Kane missed time with a leg injury, Turco faltered, and by mid-season, Corey Crawford emerged as the new number 1 goalie. At the trade deadline, General Manager Stan Bowman made some small moves, most notably acquiring Chris Campoli to help the defense. Chicago finished with a respectable 97 points, just sneaking into the playoffs as the 8th seed on the final day of the season, very far from the juggernaut they were the year before. In round 1, Vancouver was out for revenge. They dominated the first 3 games, up 3-0, but Chicago didn't back down. In games 4 and 5, the Blackhawks didn't take no for an answer, outscoring Vancouver 12-2 in these 2 games. The Hawks have momentum going back to Chicago. Game 6 backs up against the wall for the 3rd game in a row. Michael Frolic ties the game in the 3rd on a penalty shot. 15 minutes into the first overtime period, Chicago rookie Ben Smith, who had only played 6 games in the regular season, scores the overtime winner. Are the Blackhawks about to do the impossible? Game 7. One of the most intense Game 7s of the decade. Jonathan Toews ties it late in regulation with an all-effort shorthanded goal, but in overtime, Vancouver's Alex Burrows ended. The Blackhawks season ended the same way it had 11 months earlier, but this time, they were on the losing end. This loss was devastating to the team and their fans, but this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The 2010 championship was more than just a trophy. It was a signal that the Blackhawks were no longer a rebuilding team. They were champions, and as we'll see, this was just the beginning. Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, comment down below what you thought of the video, and subscribe for more sports history like this. I'll see you in the next video.